So about 6 years ago, I learned that my brother became an atheist, and that really sent me on this journey, my original journey into apologetics. Now, when he first talked to me about this and he started to raise his objections, I had no idea if there were any evidence for Jesus, even Jesus' existence,
right,
let alone the resurrection. And I imagine that probably the majority of Christians are in that same position, where they just have no idea that there's this wealth of information, and as you say, data that supports a historically grounded resurrection event in history. So what is like your 5-minute spiel on the evidence in support of the resurrection? These are facts, these are historical facts, and this is what you specialize in. So
do less than 5 minutes. I start with what I call a minimal facts argument. It's a species of reliability, one of the reliability arguments, but where most reliability arguments are top-down arguments. If the book is reliable, it's like an umbrella. Everything under it gets kept, from the rain. If the book is generally true, whatever's reported under it is accurate. Mine's a bottom up, and instead of an umbrella, I would suggest an example of a brick wall with individual facts being bricks that we put together to build a case from the bottom up. And I've used anywhere from 3 to 7 over the years. Lately, I've been doing 6. And I would say, Jesus died by crucifixion. His disciples had experiences that they believed were appearances of the risen Jesus. Because of their belief that he was raised, it is the event that has turned the world upside down religiously. In fact, a recent book on non-believing Jews and the resurrection, they even acknowledged, not being Christians, that Christianity is a resurrection religion. It was the resurrection that powered the religion, powered the teachings, even to the point of being willing to die. And we do have first century sources for arguably the 3 largest names in Christianity. 4, very important, it was proclaimed very early. And today, critics, the consensus position is that you can track the resurrection preaching back to immediately after the cross. In fact, the way it's often stated by, say, Bart Ehrman, is that when Paul said yes to Jesus on the way to Damascus, there was already a body of data called the early creeds that are later written in the New Testament, but they were already being noised abroad. When Paul said yes, there were these heavy creeds, about 80% of which are in the deity, death, resurrection of Jesus, because that's a major message. They were already in existence. So when Paul didn't invent Christianity, the main reason, when he came to Christ, the message he hated most, we already have data from that 2-year period before Paul. And then the last 2 would be individuals, James, the brother of Jesus, and Paul, both of whom become Christians because they believed they had experiences which were appearances of the risen Jesus. Those are the 6 I would use. And to my knowledge, I've had dialogues with atheists, agnostics, scholars, specialists, and they don't dispute any of those.
So how do they respond to this? That you have these facts and you establish them historically, and you say the best explanation of these facts is that God raised Jesus from the dead, right? And there are these existing naturalistic attempts of explaining away these facts.
Yeah.
What is the best one to your knowledge, and then why do you think that it fails?
Someone just asked me that yesterday, and I made the point. You'd expect me to say this, but years ago, I would have told you the one that I thought was the hardest answer. Today, I would say, not only are there no good ones, there are no good theories that you can really take and ride to the bank, so to speak. If you're a naturalist, you can really take care of the resurrection with this. But the critics have generally given up espousing these theories. I did an article some years ago where I argued that less than 25% of the critics in the last 25 years, about less than 25% use the naturalistic theories anymore. They will usually say something like this. Facts are good. I don't agree. It's your idea is the only way to go. But, you've got an evidence case. And if you pushed them a little bit and said, well, what keeps you from believing this stuff yourself? If the
Can I guess?
are good. Go ahead.
Hume.
Well, Hume, but I think generally they'll say, I just don't want to believe.
Really?
And they will say miracles don't happen, and that say that they know you're ready. They don't often want to take you on. Another comment is, yeah, but you got a problem with your theory. What's that? well, you got some data for your theory, and I'm not exactly sure where I would go to refute it. But you're asking me, implicit in your argument is you're asking me to believe in Middle Earth, Narnia, or if you want a secular example, Oz. You're asking me to believe in that. And there's no world like that. How do you know? Well, there's no, look, everything we know from empirical science, there's not an ultimate universe. And when I'm talking to a person like that, I always go, time out. Let's talk about near-death experiences. And because the evidence has been coming in so well, in a recent book, up to 30 million people in North America, England, and Europe have claimed to have near-death experiences. So I could say, hey, let's just say the number's blown up too much and there's only 20 million. In a way, that's 20 million people who've been to Narnia, if you want to look at it that way. So don't tell me there's no empirical evidence for this. And they'll say, yeah, those are just experiences. You don't have data. Well, you don't say that to me. I just gave a paper yesterday. I know of 300 evidenced NDE accounts where what's reported is empirically verified. So if you can't refute it, and it's almost impossible to refute the NDEs, if you can't refute them and you have this alternate reality, in what category? In the category of afterlife. Oh, so there may be an afterlife. Well, I didn't think so until today, but yeah, I guess maybe there is. Okay, now can we talk about resurrection? See, because I've opened the door to talk about this alternate reality, which may last forever. And you can't say anymore, yeah, but you're asking me to believe in Oz. Because I would say, I sure am, and I've got data for Oz.
So this is probably the most common objection I hear from atheists. And I do a lot of stuff online, Facebook and everything. And the one thing that they say that I see a lot is any naturalistic explanation you can think of is going to be more probable.
That's barter. I mean, that's a lot of guys.
Is your response?
No, that is this objection, because what they're saying is disciples stole the body is a lousy objection, but it's better than yours because stolen bodies happen in this world, resurrections don't. What he's saying is there's no another world. There's not another world from which Jesus was a strange visitor to this planet. To begin his missionary efforts on earth from his Father's right hand. There's no other world. So when they say, any other theory is more logical, it's not because they're not saying what a lot of Christians think they are. They're not saying all of my theories have better evidence than yours. They're not. They're saying you got some data there, but you asked me to believe in a crazy place and people can rise from the dead and we don't have any other examples. So chances are you're wrong. And I'd say, all right, 30 million people who claim to have NDEs, 300 of them are evidence.
NDE, just to make sure the audience is understanding, NDE means near-death experience.
Correct.
Right, okay.
And if I have 300 cases, and if I start telling you the examples right here, the most incredible ones, people go, oh my gosh, that's really happened? Yeah, it's recorded.
I can already tell people are wondering, well, what, like, give me a taste.
Okay,
give me one
or two. But before I do that, let me just tell you one thing. How people are just missing the whole realm. A fellow that just retired from University of Virginia Medical School. He's probably the leading NDE expert. His name is Bruce Grayson. As far as I know, not a Christian.
Okay.
In fact, Bruce told me one time he'd gone to the East from these studies, so maybe Buddhism or something. I don't know. I can't speak for him. But Bruce himself has published 100 peer-reviewed near-death articles in medical and psychological journals. So if people go, you're talking about cartoons, man. It's like SpongeBob, he lives in a pineapple under the sea. Yeah, right. That's why it was written up in 100, that's why 100 articles written up in medical journals. So
yeah,
you're just
that's
not
why
reading the data.
Yeah.
And so we'd have to go to the evidence cases. Okay, here are a couple examples. Fast ones. Some of them take a while to develop, but a couple fast ones. And
you're writing a book on this, right? So people can go to, no?
I've got a book with chapters in it. And I just debated a guy on this subject. He doesn't believe in them. I do. It was published by Blackwell. And he and I just debated. And I have probably 30 of these cases, evidential cases divided into 5 evidential categories. And,
well, give me these 2.
Yeah, here's a couple. This woman has she's being operated on. She has a near-death experience. She's up above her body. She's looking down. She's watching herself. And sometimes they don't even know it's them because they identify with who's up by the ceiling. That's their point of consciousness. And on the top of this medical device that was in the room, hospitals often rivet numbers like offices do to keep track of typewriters and to keep track of things. She looked down and there was a 12-digit number riveted onto the top of this medical thing. And she said, I'm OCD. And so I memorized the 12-digit number. And so she comes to, she says to the nurse, write this down. Now, I'm not saying this is a number, but it's like, write this down, 675-21600. 12 numbers. And the nurse wrote it down. And they were later moving the apparatus out of the room. And the nurse jumps in and says, whoa, 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 wait a minute. Let me get my sheet out. Wow, the number's exactly right. Now, she sees that in a state, and many of these people, when you have a cardiac arrest with ventricular fibrillation, this particular species of cardiac arrest, you have no measurable heart waves, and within an average of 15 seconds, you have no brain waves. So if she was out of her body for as long as 5 minutes, she theoretically has no heart or brain waves. How does she know? How does she know to repeat that data? How does she know what's up there? So that's one well-evidenced one. Boy, people ask me, they'll say, well, I'll say, what kind of evidence do you want? I'll give you another one is a real fast one. A guy had surgery. He was up above his body watching the doctors do this, but he got maybe a little bored. I don't know. He started drifting a little bit, looking around. He went through a wall into the next surgical ward, and he watched a guy having his leg amputated. So he gives an explanation of what happens in the room with the leg amputation because I saw it, but you're on that bed. Yeah, but I'm telling you, I saw it. How do you know? Here's some explanation. I'm making up what he might have said, but he could have said, well, all the nurses in the room had white uniforms on, except for this one. She had a pale green uniform on. I mean, something like that. Or these are actual cases. In one, a person dropped a beaker on the floor and it broke, and the person watched it. Or in another one, a woman's pin fell off her dress, and a doctor stepped on it. And the near-death person said, I know who lost the pen, and I can name the doctor who stepped on it because I saw it. So these are data, and many times in the absence of heart and brain, any kind of activity, measurable. And so it seems like we're talking about, here's the point, we're talking about consciousness beyond the initial death of heart and brain. Now, it's near death because the person comes back from it, but during those minutes while they're out, it's highly evidential.